The ordinary life before the storm. The story begins in the quiet days after war. The woman named Claire had seen the world break and bleed, yet now she walked in peace. Her hands no longer covered in blood but resting in calm. She was a healer, a wife, and she believed the fighting was behind her. Scotland was green with life. The roads were alive with laughter, and her heart was heavy only with memories. But fate never rests, not even when the heart begs for silence. One journey through the hills seemed ordinary. The air smelled of rain, and her husband's hand was warm in hers. They spoke of a future, of children, of growing old together. The world felt safe again, too safe, as if the land itself was waiting, watching, holding a secret it could no longer hide. The night fell soft and the fires at the inn burned low, but dreams never warned her. Not of the stones that waited in the mist, not of the circle that whispered her name. In the morning she walked with her husband toward the ancient ruins, laughing at old tales, stories of witches and spirits that locals spoke with wide eyes. She brushed them aside, her voice steady, her mind sharp, yet her heart trembled when the wind grew cold. The stones stood high, silent, carved by time. They hummed like the earth itself was alive. She placed her hand upon the stone, soft at first, curious, but then the world split apart. Her breath caught as the air rushed from her chest. The earth roared, the sky twisted, and everything she knew vanished in a single cry. The voices of her time faded, and the voices of another world filled her ears. When her eyes opened, the world was not the same. The sky was sharper, the air smelled of smoke and iron. Men shouted in strange tongues, and the hills looked ancient and dangerous. Her husband was gone, her world was gone. She stood alone in the past, and in that moment, Claire realized the truth. Her life had been stolen by time, and nothing would ever be the same again. The ground was hard beneath her feet. The sky above carried no kindness, and the air was filled with sounds she had never heard before. Shouts of men, the clashing of steel, the thunder of hooves pounding the earth. Claire stumbled through the trees, her heart racing, her breath short. She was no longer in her time, no longer safe. Every shadow felt alive. Every branch looked like a hand reaching for her. She heard them before she saw them. Soldiers, not of her world but of another. Men in wool and leather, carrying swords, their faces marked with dirt and rage. They spoke a language that was familiar yet strange. Heavy with old weight, she hid, trembling, but the forest gave no mercy. A crack beneath her foot gave her away. The soldiers turned, their eyes sharp, and they chased her through the wild hills. Her hands reached for anything, branches, rocks, but she was helpless. The skirts of her dress caught in the thorns. Her lungs burned. She had no plan, no map, no way home. A voice inside her screamed to wake up, that this was a dream. But pain is never a dream. And when one of the men grabbed her arm, she knew it was real. They called her witch, spy, stranger. They pulled her into their circle, their words sharp, their grip cruel. But just as the blade rose, another sound broke the night. Hooves again, louder, faster. The clash of another group of riders, men shouting in Gaelic, swords drawn. The fight erupted like fire. Blood struck the earth. Steel rang, and Claire was thrown to the ground, watching lives end in a storm of rage. From the chaos came a figure, tall, broad, scarred, his eyes hard but not cruel. He pulled her to her feet, his voice rough but steady. "You're safe now," he said. Though nothing in this place felt safe, she looked at him confused, afraid. And yet there was something in his eyes that cut through the terror, a strange warmth that clashed against the storm around her. Dragged through the wild night, Claire was taken to a place she had never dreamed. A world of clans, of oaths written in blood, of fires burning under stone walls. She saw men wounded, women whispering prayers, and the old banners hanging above their heads. She was in a time where trust was rare and life was a coin spent quickly. Her mind screamed for her husband, for her own time, for the world she knew. But the stone circle was gone, and the man beside her, this stranger with scars on his face and fire in his heart, was now the only one standing between her and death. Claire stood in the firelight, the faces of warriors staring at her with suspicion. Whispers of witch, whispers of spy. Yet something inside her refused to break. She was no longer a woman lost. She was a woman forced to survive, and in this strange world, survival would demand everything. The days turned into nights, and the nights into shadows of fear and whispers. Claire lived among them now, in a world where trust was rare and secrets carried the weight of blood. They called her healer. They called her stranger. But their eyes never stopped watching. Every movement she made carried suspicion. Yet one man's gaze was different, steady, unshaken. It was Jamie, the warrior who had pulled her from death's grip. His presence was like fire in the cold stone halls, his voice rough but gentle, his strength born not only from his sword but from a strange kindness that slipped through his guarded eyes. She told herself not to look, not to feel, but the heart does not listen to reason, and each glance across the fire, each moment when his hand brushed hers as he passed a cup, drew her deeper into a storm she could not control. At night she dreamed of her husband, the man she had left behind, the man who waited for her in another century. His face haunted her, his touch burned her memory, and yet when she woke it was Jamie's eyes that met hers. His scars telling stories of battles fought and wounds carried, stories that reached her in silence, stories that whispered of pain and loyalty. The world around them was violent, clans clashed, whispers of rebellion filled the night. Danger lurked with every step, and yet in that chaos, there were stolen moments. His hand steadying her as she stumbled on the uneven path, his voice soft when others spoke with suspicion, his shield raised when blades turned toward her. Little by little the walls she built cracked, and the line between duty and desire blurred. One night by the fire, when the sky was dark and the wind howled against the stones, she found herself sitting beside him, the flames casting shadows across his face. He spoke of family, of land, of battles that left him broken, and she spoke of a world he could not imagine. Machines, roads, cities of light. He laughed softly, not mocking but in wonder, as if her words were a song from another world. Her heart trembled, torn between two loves, one bound by vows and time, the other born from survival and fire. She whispered to herself that it was wrong, that she must resist, but when Jamie's hand touched hers, firm, protective, and unafraid, her breath caught, and the silence between them spoke louder than any oath. And in that silence, Claire understood the truth. The past was no longer only a prison, it was a place where her heart was being rewritten, a place where love was as dangerous as war, and passion could cost her everything. The hills of Scotland were no longer quiet. They thundered with marching feet. With banners raised high and swords drawn in the firelight, the clans spoke of honor, of freedom, of blood debts that could only be answered in steel. And Claire stood in the center of it all, a woman out of time, a voice that no one trusted, yet a presence no one could ignore. Every night the air grew heavier with whispers of rebellion. Leaders gathered in stone halls lit by torches, their words sharp, their tempers burning. Maps spread across wooden tables, hands slamming down as oaths were made, to rise against the crown, to fight until their last breath. And though she did not belong here, the weight of history pressed against her chest. She knew battles were coming, battles that would shape not only these men but the very course of nations. Claire's gift was healing, and in this world of war her hands were never still. Blood stained her palms, screams filled her ears, and faces twisted in agony haunted her eyes. She stitched wounds under candlelight. She pressed herbs into broken flesh. She tried to save them, yet the war always asked for more. More lives, more sacrifices, and she began to see the cruelty of time, how it chained her to a fate she did not choose. Beside her, Jamie rose as a leader, his voice carrying across the men. His blade sharp and his heart fierce, he fought not only for land but for loyalty. And with each battle he grew into a figure the clans began to follow. Claire saw the fire in him, a fire that could either save them or burn them alive. Her heart ached, for she knew this fire would one day consume him, and perhaps her as well. The nights were torn by raids, villages burned. Women wept as homes turned to ash. Men fell with cries swallowed by the wind, and Claire could no longer pretend she was an outsider untouched by their fate. She was caught in the storm, a prisoner of time and of her own heart. One evening, as flames painted the sky red, she found herself standing at the edge of the battlefield, smoke rising, the ground littered with steel and bodies, and in the chaos she heard Jamie's voice calling her name. He pulled her close, his arms covered in blood that was not his own, and for a moment the world slowed, their breaths heavy, their eyes locked. But the war around them reminded her, love was fragile, and in rebellion it could be destroyed in a single heartbeat. The clash of swords, the roar of muskets, the cries of men, all echoed into the night, and Claire's soul trembled with the truth. This land was breaking and she was bound to it, no longer only as a healer, no longer only as a stranger, but as a piece of a history that demanded her blood as much as theirs. The fire of war did not only burn villages, it burned inside Claire's chest. Two worlds pulled at her heart like chains tied to different stars. One voice belonged to her husband, a man of her own century, a man of vows and promises. The other belonged to Jamie, fierce, wounded, and alive in ways that shook her soul. Each step she took forward felt like betrayal. Each glance backward felt like loss. At night she stared into the flames, her hands trembling as she pressed them together, whispering names that no one here understood. Her husband's face returned in dreams, his smile, his touch, his voice calling her back. But when the morning came, it was Jamie's shadow beside her, his breath warm in the cold dawn, his hand steady on her shoulder, and her heart betrayed her with every beat. The clans demanded loyalty, the world demanded choice, but love does not wait for permission. It rises like storm clouds. Silent and sudden, Claire tried to bury it. Tried to tell herself she could endure, but every time Jamie looked at her, not with suspicion, not with cruelty, but with the raw truth of a man who saw her as his equal, her resolve broke. Whispers grew louder, men questioned her, women warned her. The circle of suspicion tightened, and yet the greatest danger was not their judgment. It was her own heart. She could not belong to both. She could not stand in 2 centuries, and she knew that time would tear her apart if she tried. One night, as the storm raged outside the stone walls, she stood before him, her voice breaking. "I cannot, I should not," she whispered. But Jamie's eyes did not turn away. He spoke with no anger, no demand, only truth. "You belong where your heart beats," and in that moment, the world around them fell silent. The choice was no longer about survival. It was about surrender, surrendering to love, or surrendering to duty, to history, to vows spoken in another life. She wanted to believe she could carry both, but the weight was crushing. And as she looked into Jamie's eyes, she saw a future written in blood and fire, a future she could not escape. Her breath shook, her hands trembled, and deep inside she realized the cruel truth. No matter which choice she made, she would lose something she could never get back. And in the silence that followed, the storm outside seemed to echo the storm within her soul. The land shook with the weight of war. Drums pounded through the valleys, steel clashed against steel, and the air was thick with smoke and fear. Claire had thought the choice in her heart was the heaviest burden she would ever face. But now the world around her demanded more than love. It demanded survival, sacrifice, and the strength to walk through fire. The clans rose fierce and unbroken, banners of rebellion snapping in the wind, and the crown struck back with fire and fury. Villages burned, rivers turned red, and the cries of the dying carried into the night. Claire moved among the wounded, her hands steady though her soul trembled, stitching flesh, pressing cloth against wounds, hearing the last words of men who would never see another dawn. She was a healer, but even healing could not keep death away. Betrayals bled into the chaos. Men who swore loyalty turned their blades on kin. Oaths written in blood were broken under the weight of fear, and whispers of spies twisted the halls where she stood. Some looked at Claire and saw a stranger, a witch, a curse sent to tear them apart. Every step she took was shadowed by suspicion. Every glance a reminder she did not belong. Jamie fought at the front, his blade flashing, his voice rising above the roar. He carried the weight of his people, and with each strike he risked everything. Claire watched him return bloodied, scarred, his eyes burning with defiance. But she also saw the cost. Each victory tore a piece of him away, and the man she loved was being consumed by the very war that gave him purpose. The storm reached its breaking point one night when the enemy closed in on their stronghold. Torches lit the horizon, steel rang in the dark, and Claire found herself pulled into the heart of battle. No longer only a healer, no longer only a witness, but a piece of the fight itself. She ran through the chaos, smoke stinging her eyes, calling names, searching for him, her voice breaking against the storm. And then through the fire she found him, Jamie wounded, his strength fading, his eyes heavy with pain. She fell to her knees beside him, her hands pressing against his wound, her tears mixing with the blood on her palms. "You cannot leave me," she whispered. Her voice breaking, but his hand rose, trembling, and touched her face, his eyes locking onto hers with a fire that refused to die. The world around them roared with war. But in that moment the battlefield vanished. It was only the two of them, bound not by time, not by reason, but by a love that refused to bow to fate. And yet the storm did not end, it only grew darker. And Claire understood their love was not a shield. It was a flame, and flames can burn everything they touch. The storm did not end, it only split into fragments of fire and silence. Claire's heart pounded with the weight of choices, of love, of time itself tearing her apart, and as the world around her collapsed, her story rose like a flame against the dark. The screen flickers with moments. Her hand pressed to the stone circle, her eyes wide with terror. Jamie raising his sword against the charge of men twice his number, blood dripping from steel, fire roaring across villages, children screaming, banners burning, faces twisted in betrayal, and Claire running through the chaos with her voice breaking in the wind. The montage grows faster. Flashes of stolen love. His lips on hers under the shadow of fire. Her hand trembling as she stitched his wounds. His voice whispering her name in the dark, and then flashes of her husband's face. Smiling, waiting, calling from another time. The clash of two worlds cutting her heart in half. Whispers grow louder. Voices echo across the screen. You don't belong here. She is ours. You must decide. The music swells, drums pounding, strings tearing through silence. And then, the moment of stillness, Claire standing between two men. 2 centuries, her hands trembling, her face broken by tears. Her breath shaking as she whispers, "How can I choose?" The silence lingers for one breath, one heartbeat, and then the storm returns. A flood of images, Jamie raising her hand to his lips. Her husband's voice screaming her name through the mist, the stone circle glowing. Torches burning, steel crashing, screams echoing, fire raining against the night sky. The montage cuts to black, the silence sharp. And then a voice, low and haunting, whispers across the darkness. Time is never on your side. The screen explodes with the title card, bold and burning across the void. Outlander, Season 1. The music crashes, echoing like thunder across the hills, and then fades into silence, leaving only the sound of a single heartbeat.